Hello and welcome back to another episode of the On the Sideline podcast with Jackson and Kyle. I'm joined here, as always, by the man who can catch a Mac Jones deep ball as well as a New England Patriots receiver. Kyle, how are you doing?
Doing good. This is our last weekend without, football that really is competitive play and matters towards like standings, rankings, that kind of thing. We got college football next weekend and then pro football 2 weeks after that.
Yeah, it's happening, Kyle. We're here.
I know. We made it through this offseason. By the way, if you haven't listened, go back and look at our division previews. We also do a bunch of predictions at the end of the NFC South. Been good stuff, though. It's been a fun offseason. Looking forward to the actual games, though.
Yeah, so I figured the way we'll do this is we'll start off with some preseason talk. Then we have what should be an interesting sort of meat of this show where we're going to talk about the 20 things we're most excited about heading into the 2021 season. We're keeping it vague, just things, so that should be fun. But first, let's start off with just general thoughts on the preseason. Kyle, where do you want to start off with this?
I think the biggest thing that I look for is, when I'm looking at preseason games, because I know it's all in kind of perspective of what you're looking at. I mean, and there's a lot of, you're trying different things, you're testing out different players. Obviously, it's not full first teams, all that kind of stuff. I think you're looking for the confidence of rookie players is the big thing that I look for, especially, you're looking at the rookie quarterbacks. And the second thing is that when I look at more experienced players, I really want to kind of see them dominate on the field in preseason games. Like if you're expected to take a leap, especially as a second-year player, I kind of want to see you owning preseason and looking the part. And the rookie quarterbacks have obviously been the big question. It was the biggest story of the offseason, I think, with 5 rookie quarterbacks taken in the top 15. Looking at those guys, and I saw a lot of the highlights of week 1 kind of stuff, and then I saw a few of the week 2 games that have happened. I know 2 of our guys are playing still haven't played in week 2, looking at Lawrence and Trey Lance. The 2 most impressive rookie quarterbacks to me, though, have been Mac Jones and Zach Wilson. Both of these guys I thought have been very accurate. They've placed the ball really well. I thought they've been really good performing with their teams, and they've been the most impressive rookies so far this preseason.
Yeah, I completely agree. And, both of our guys kind of. Zach Wilson was my main guy, and Mac Jones was your main guy and ends up going to your favorite team, which helps add to that. Not that Mac Jones was your number 1 guy, but just that you were, high on him from a year ago. That's a good way to talk about it, is how much do we focus on preseason? I don't care about the score, and I don't care about the stat line. What I care about is just what I've seen on tape. And a big thing I care about is going to just be, what have I seen from you in college, and how has that changed in the NFL? So for someone like a Mac Jones, for example, or I guess, so let's start off with like a Trey Lance, who I wasn't really impressed with his week 1 performance. And a big thing is the question mark around him is how is he going to do on those intermediate throws? And I thought he had a subpar performance. So even though he had a great deep ball, I already knew that was the case. That's kind of what I look for is the questions I had heading into the NFL. How do those look? Which can kind of change things, I think.
Yeah. I mean, if you went off preseason results, the Ravens would be the greatest team in NFL history. I mean, the record they've had over the last 3 or 4 years is pretty insane.
Does anyone understand why? Does anyone have a theory as to why that is? It makes no sense to me.
I don't know. My one of the things I was thinking about is because the Patriots always look pretty good in preseason because they typically have a pretty deep roster. I imagine the Ravens are kind of the same, where just because they prioritize having guys 1 through 53 be competitive players, that they kind of just have that depth to dominate. But anyway, it is kind of funny to watch. But yeah, I mean, like I said, I thought Wilson looked awesome in his last game. He was hyper accurate. I think him and Corey Davis already look like they're going to be an awesome connection. And having that number 1 target is going to be interesting. I think one thing that we'll have to look at for Wilson, and I don't think it's just a him problem, I think it's an all rookie quarterbacks. Typically rookie quarterbacks, I think there's a lot of statistics that back this up too, is they'll kind of like fall in love with one target and kind of like just go crazy on throwing to that one guy. I think he's got to be able to look off of Davis every now and then. But the connection's already there, and it's already looked really impressive. I think he's going to have a huge season, and he's already looking the part of, as you had him as your number 1 quarterback in at the NFL draft. He's looked the part of a number 1 quarterback with the New York Jets.
Yeah, and again, I could talk about Zach Wilson all day. This could be just a Zach Wilson podcast, and we'd have to cut it short because I'd still have things to talk about. But I mean, that throw that he had where he's under pressure and he's throwing to admittedly a wide open receiver, but it's like 40 yards down the field, he's off balance, and he makes that throw. There's only a couple guys in the league who make that throw, even if it is preseason. It's like doesn't make the throw any easier.
Yeah, no, exactly. It's just been really impressive for him. I've been really impressed. I mean, I already expected a lot out of him. I had him at the end of the day as my number 2 quarterback. So I already expected big things from him, but everything that he's done has just been impressive so far. And, maybe we'll reevaluate Rookie of the Year thoughts because I felt like, it was above and beyond Trevor Lawrence going to win it just because the offensive weapons he had. But Wilson has risen to the occasion and looked the part for the Jets.
Yeah, I placed the bet this morning on Zach Wilson plus 750 to win Offensive Rookie of the Year. That feels like a steal right now.
Yeah, I mean it could be unless my guy here, Mac Jones, as we can transition to the New England Patriots, if he finds a way to win the job, look, he's been really impressive. I mean, I'm keeping expectations tempered, but I've been really pleased. Ecstatic, honestly, with the showing of the first team players for the New England Patriots. We already had a fantastic secondary. Matthew Judon has been maybe the best defensive player in all of preseason, which is exciting to watch. Just looking through the roster, Cam is throwing a good ball. I thought he threw some really good passes in that Philly game as well. Jones obviously came in and looked hyper accurate as well. Even his incomplete passes look good. We have 4 running backs. We have so many running backs right now that we're going to have to cut a good running back, which, kind of stinks. But at the same time, that's a good problem to have. If we have to cut Sony Michel because Ramondre Stevenson, oh my gosh, Ramondre Stevenson. I can't get over this.
So, Kyle, this is I had him as my running back 3, and this is a good take by me.
Well, the thing is like, I was like, okay, this guy's our next LeGarrette Blount. He looks the part of Blount. He even kind of looks like Blount. He runs like Blount. This guy looks like Marshawn Lynch out there. The way he can get to the next level and make guys miss along with his size. Oh, man. Everything about the Patriots has just looked awesome. I can't do – I'm just pleased with the performances so far. So I'm definitely looking at these guys to, make the playoffs this season. That's the expectation, especially with the performances by the first team.
Yeah, and that's the best part about preseason, I would say, too, is that just it breeds excitement. It gives you reasons for hope.
Yeah. I'll do some quick one-offs, and then you could probably go off of a lot of this with the rookie quarterbacks. Sure. Like I said, Mac and Zach look really good. Shane Buechele actually looked pretty good, I thought, for the Chiefs. I know he's going against a lot of reserves, and he's going in that Chiefs offense. But I thought he was interesting. He could win that backup quarterback job. Sam Ehlinger, I thought he was really good in week 1 from the tape I saw. Really kind of average in week 2 from the tape I saw. But, there is a chance that he still wins that starting job for the Colts, I think. He's back, obviously. You mentioned about Trey Lance. I kind of agree with what you said. The first touchdown was obviously really exciting. The rest of the game was kind of meh for me. I know that they weren't doing a whole lot with him yet. I think that he's, in an expanded role in a bigger game. I think they, move him around a lot more and do different things with him. And then the one everyone wants to talk about.
Let me jump in for a second because with the Trey Lance, I thought there was a good comment earlier of JT Easy 275 says if you incorporate running zone read for Trey Lance, he'll excel. He's not a pocket quarterback. I think that's a good point as well. Is they don't want him to get hit, so it does make sense that in the pocket he's not quite as good. So that logic that's an important factor to bring in. I think also. Yeah,
and then I guess the one everyone's talking about is Justin Fields, so we should go off of that, right?
Yeah.
So there are things about Fields that, like I said, when I was really high on him in college, there's things that are still really impressive about Justin Fields. He can throw the ball downfield really well. He can move. He's incredibly mobile in the pocket. But I do think that there are some things that when you look at things that Justin Fields struggles with, and millions, especially you were one of his biggest proponents. Not that, he should have been like a 5th round pick, but, I think you had him 5th of those 5 big quarterbacks, or I think you had him 6th, actually.
Yeah, I had him on ahead as well.
Yeah, so when you look at, Fields as a prospect, I think some of the things that were the concerns are still there. I think the accuracy issues, I think he missed on a couple throws that I thought he could have made. And then the big one is obviously, and this is something that he, even after the game, I went back and looked at it. This is something he said he needs to improve upon too. So he's looking at this as things he can improve upon. The blitz protection and blitz pickup. I mean, obviously the big one was where he got obliterated in that game against the Bills the other day. But that's definitely something that, especially with a suspect offensive line like the Bears and Tevin Jenkins' injury, I mean, he's just got to be better at that because that was pretty, there was nobody knew that guy was coming. He came right off the edge and he just got killed. And, if you're going to be a franchise quarterback, you got to make sure you're not taking those kind of hits. Some of that's on the offensive line, but you are also, as a quarterback, picking up or reading those protections as well. And so I think there are some concerns with Fields, but the electric stuff we saw on tape are still there too. So I think I'm overall pleased with Fields, but still know that it's a project.
Yeah, Sage Air, before we came on, sort of talked about how I'll spend 10 seconds talking about his positives and then 20 minutes about the negatives. But the reason why I do this, and just so everyone understands, is if there's someone who the general consensus is had an A+ performance, and I think they had a B performance, I'm going to spend more time talking about their negatives because I'm talking against the consensus. If someone had people think had an F performance, and I think they had a C performance, I'll talk more about their positives, even though I don't think they played as well. So that's an aspect of this. But yeah, I agree with everything you said. We'll start off with my biggest positive is his running ability looks legit at the NFL level. It's not. I would like to see him against first team. With a first team in front of him and first team against him. But so far, the running ability is by far and away the best part about Fields' game, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I mean, this is where all the Cam Newton comparisons came from because he's so big, but he can also move really well. He's incredibly agile.
Mm-hmm.
And I do think that's something that is going to translate. I do think I'm a little concerned about some of the hits he takes. He takes some massive hits. And he's also a big guy, so people have to hit him hard to kind of bring him down. I think that's the one concern you have with it, but yes, he is incredibly mobile, and that's something that's translated to preseason games, and honestly, something we kind of expected to translate to the next level.
Yeah, again, the negatives are there, and it's a thing I was big on talking about going into the draft. Is probably my biggest criticism of him was the pocket presence and picking up blitzes. I talked about this a lot, and people keep saying, "Well, why do you harp on this so much?" That's the reason why Josh Rosen became a bust. That was the main thing that he did poorly. Dwayne Haskins, another example of a guy who really struggled with that. It's significant, and he's going to have to learn. And that's what I do actually think I think it's a smart move to let Justin Fields sit for a year. I do. I think that you let him sit. This is a punt year. Maybe you have him come in and play the last, half of the season or whatever. But I think it makes sense to not have him get killed out there and let him learn how the splits protection stuff works. Rashad in the comments says, "Do you think Andy Dalton can help Fields with these issues?" I think he can. I think you let him ride the bench for the first half of the season.
Yeah, and I think the one problem is Andy Dalton hasn't really come out and looked the part of a number one quarterback, and I think that's been the biggest thing. Like, honestly, is there a reason that Andy Dalton shouldn't be crushing preseason at this point in his career?
Yeah, I agree. I think that he has. I mean, he had that one good throw, and you could argue, okay, who does he have around him? But you're right. I think maybe a big thing to talk about is unless Matt Nagy is just trying to not show much in the preseason. All the people saying, "Oh, Matt Nagy is going to look good this season." I don't know how the hell that became a narrative. Matt Nagy is Matt Nagy.
Yeah, exactly. He definitely seems like he's on his way out, and it hasn't looked good for the Bears overall, I think, with that. Other guys who I've been impressed with so far, I guess, continuing with the rookie conversations.
Mm-hmm.
Troy Dye with a nice pick six. He's a nice linebacker with a huge college pedigree. I thought looked pretty good. Micah Parsons looks like he's just going to hit the ground running and, might make us look foolish when he runs away with Defensive Rookie of the Year, which is kind of silly that neither one of us picked him when he was by far the number one defensive prospect.
Right.
And then the two Titans, I'll talk about this briefly. I thought, the Titans look like they might have hit a home run with both of their defensive back picks. I thought Elijah Molden looked especially good. I thought Farley showed glimpses of looking awesome too. So I think that they're both going to be pretty good. Maybe down the line, we'll see. Maybe even year one, which would be surprising for rookie defensive backs. And then maybe the one conversation we should have is two guys that were kind of debated on who should get picked first or second. both really struggling early on. That is Penei Sewell and Jamar Chase.
Yeah.
Both have shown both didn't play last year, which is an interesting variable to this too. Are they both rusty? Sewell's look kind of just slow to me, honestly. He's looked slow off the ball at times, and I don't know if he's just, like I said, it could be a rust thing, or maybe it's just he's having some issues adjusting to the next level yet. And then the Chase drops is concerning, especially when that wasn't really an issue for him in college for me, and he's just dropping footballs. It's just a weird thing. I expect that to kind of shake off too, but overall, those are two guys who I think are struggling a bit, but I think are going to be, I think they'll turn it around. It's just struggles early.
Yeah, I think for Chase, I'm not worried. I think that, the throws were a little bit tough. You want him to catch it for sure, but drops are a thing. I mean, how many drops did Jerry Jeudy have in that one game? Like, that it's something that tends to, I remember Mike Evans, his second season, led the league in drops and then has turned out it is something that tends to be a bit fluky. And when you get drop one, it kind of gets in your head a little bit. The Odell Beckham Jr. playoff game after the infamous boat photo that happened where he dropped one pass and then kind of started dropping some more. And obviously he's sure-handed. I'm not really too worried about that, to be honest. The Sewell thing was tough, and there was a lot of it was hand placement. I thought his hand placement wasn't great, which does make me wonder, could you argue it was a mistake to draft a guy who's never played right tackle to play right tackle with the number 7 overall pick?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I don't know how hard of a translation that is. I don't know how hard that is to adjust to. Obviously, I've never played offensive line. So it's hard to quite understand, but maybe it's something. But at the same time, the Bears were doing the same thing, and I thought Tevin Jenkins looked fine until his injury. So, I mean, we'll see overall. I do think he's going to be okay, though. I mean, he just felt like a can't-miss prospect, so I'm not overly worried about it. I think he's just adjusting to the game. And like I said, I do think there is something to both of them missing. I know Parsons and a few other guys have looked pretty good after taking off last year, but I do think there is something to taking a whole year off and then, jumping into the action and expecting to be number one guys. So I do think that they'll both end up being okay and adjusting as the season goes on. Any other rookies that you thought stood out?
The one I have to talk about, I think, is Kellen Mond, who I didn't think he was awful, but it was maybe not the best. I think people are crushing him for his week 2 performance. I thought it was fine. He missed a couple throws. He's getting put on the third team, which I just don't love. Let him at least let. He's the kind of guy who you want to see him with talent around him, not with no talent around him. So I don't really understand that. So Kellen Mond, I would like to see a little bit more, I guess. And also Kyle Trask, again, I thought his week 2 performance was better, but it's just I just don't understand that selection.
Yeah, at least Joe Tryon looks pretty good.
Yeah, Joe Tryon. That's good. We got that one at least.
Yeah, and then another one of your boys, as Duval, I see you set up here. Andre Cisco looks pretty good, I think. He's looked the part, I think, in preseason, and the conversation in camps too. I was reading an article from the local paper there, and they think he's going to start week 1 now. I mean, he's looked that good in preseason, I think, in training camp. So Cisco could be one of the biggest steals, I think, with the way he's performed.
Yeah. All right. So, interesting. I also thought Eric Stokes has had some moments. I thought Tyson Campbell looked good outside of one big play, and also another Titan, Dylan Raduns looked good tackle. So I haven't watched his week 2 tape, but his week 1 tape was good. So, all right, you ready to wrap up the preseason?
Yeah, we can wrap up the preseason and head into our next conversation.
All right, so what we're going to do is it's draft style. You know how we love our drafts here on the On the Sideline podcast. We're going to just go in draft order of the top 20 most exciting, just things we're most excited for heading into the 2021 season.
Yeah. So we'll go ahead and get into this. Do you want the number 1 or number 2 pick?
I'll take the number 1 pick.
Okay, go for it.
All right, I'm going for something that a guy who's not even going to start week 1. I'm going Justin Fields, number 1 overall. I'm just interested in how this is going to work. He's electric to watch. Again, part of it is, I was lower on him than most. I'm just interested in seeing, am I right? Is everyone else right? That's adding intrigue to me. I think that, the Chicago Bears, will they finally have a quarterback? There's no reason to watch the Bears until Fields gets in there. But I think that Justin Fields is number 1 guy I'm most looking forward to. Will these things that I believe are issues into the NFL actually be issues, or will he be able to overcome them?
Yeah, I had rookie quarterbacks as number 5 on my list. I'll go ahead and just kind of lump it in with that. But yeah, I mean, I think he's the biggest question because the Bears, basically, besides Cleveland until they got Baker Mayfield, these have been the two franchises that were like, oh, if this team just could hit a home run on a quarterback finally. And the Bears, again, are taking a swing at this after letting Mitch Trubisky go, which, by the way, Trubisky dominating Chicago was pretty hilarious. I thought that was pretty funny.
Yeah.
So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I thought, I think that's going to be the interesting one because the Bears have been like, oh, we're a quarterback away for so many years, even though I think there's a little more holes to the team than just the quarterback. But Fields is definitely the one with the most pressure on him to perform, being in Chicago and being with that franchise that has just been beleaguered with quarterback options over the decade.
Yeah, I think they're way more than a quarterback away at this point. I think it's,
Yeah.
if it was 2 years ago, again, when Mitchell Trubisky was drafted, it was, they were a quarterback away. I think they're further away now. But yeah, I mean, and again, if it works, he's going to instantly be like one of the most exciting players in football. To have his size, his ability to move. Again, I've talked about my questions with it. Should be fun to look for.
Yeah, without a doubt. I think he's going to be an interesting player. I mean, I guess do you want to lump in all the rookie quarterbacks or do you want to just keep this to Fields?
Well, we can do that if you want. I mean, I didn't have that prepared. I had them separated. So,
Okay. Well, we'll
yeah,
keep it to Fields then. When do you think Justin Fields starts? What week?
I think like week like 4. I think I think the Bears will go like 0-3, and there'll be too much pressure, and they'll start him before they're planning on starting him now.
You don't think it'll be week 2?
It might be. I mean, it'll be earlier than I think. It'll be earlier than they're planning because I think at a certain point, Nagy's going to say, "I have to save my job. We'll put in Fields."
Yeah, I kind of agree. I think it's going to be earlier than people think. I think okay, if you said let's do this. So if you said 4 rookies or 4.5 rookies start this year, over or under, are you taking the over or are you taking the under?
I think I'll take the over. I think 5. And again, we're just talking not due to injury, right? But due to actually playing.
Yes.
Yeah, I'll take the over. I think they all end up in there at some point.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I do think Fields is the biggest one, so we'll see what happens. The thing is like, I do think there's so much pressure on him for playing in Chicago, but I think it is going to be some growing pains. I think people just have to be patient with him because I do think the talent is there to be a star in this league. It's just going to take some time.
Yeah, I think he's in an unfortunate scenario too of he is a project in my opinion, but that's not the general consensus about him. People are expecting him to be good right away. So I hope that people don't, kill him too much if he has a bad game or two.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. So I'll go ahead and go on to number 2 here. This was the one I had at number 1, and it's will there be a rematch? Well, is there a rematch this season? Because that is the growing consensus around football circles is that there might be a rematch. I think it's the most bet Super Bowl option right now this year. Tampa Bay with this interesting variable of bringing back all 22 starters from a Super Bowl winning team. The Kansas City Chiefs retooling their offensive line and basically bringing a lot of the team back. Besides that, this is going to be a really competitive. These are 2 really competitive teams still at the top of their respective conferences. I think. Is there going to be a rematch this season? I think is going to be something to watch.
Yeah, I had, there's going to be a bit of like, I feel like a family feudness here. We're going to have some things that kind of fit, but don't exactly fit because I had the Will the Buccaneers repeat. So it's a very similar thing. And yeah, I mean, it's rare that we have, everyone talks about all the starters the Buccaneers have brought back. Well, the Chiefs are basically the same team that they've been for the past couple of years. They changed the offensive line, but they upgraded there and everything else is pretty much the same. So there's the only reason to really believe this won't be a rematch is this if you believe other teams have gotten better, which I think we both do. Neither one of us had either of these teams winning the Super Bowl, but yeah, this is definitely something to look forward to.
I definitely think teams got better around them, and I think that's the big thing is that it's just going to be that much tougher to do it, and that's why it's so hard to make it to back-to-back Super Bowls, or for Kansas City they're trying to make their 3rd straight Super Bowl. It's so hard to do that, but I do think if I were to make a power rankings of teams in each conference, I would still probably have these teams 1 and 2. I would still probably have these teams as the 2 best teams in football. I think Cleveland's definitely in the conversation, a few other teams, but just in terms of overall rosters, and then, the biggest proponent is having 2 of the 3 best quarterbacks in the league right now. I think that's the advantage that these 2 teams have. And, why I would have them as the 2 Super Bowl favorites right now.
Wait, I'm a little confused. Didn't you have neither of them making the Super Bowl in our predictions?
Yeah, I did, but that was also, I think I said at the time, I kind of wanted to be contrarian, and I do think the
Okay.
playoffs offer some variability where you don't have to necessarily say the best 2 teams in the league are going to make the Super Bowl. I still think that these are probably the 2 most talented teams in the NFL right now, especially because of having Mahomes and Brady.
All right. Well, we'll move on to number 3 now. How about Lamar Jackson? I'm looking forward to seeing Lamar. Will he? He has in theory, he has a better receiving core this year, at least on paper. Will this be better? He obviously won MVP 2 years ago. Kind of a down stretch. Can he, bounce back a little bit and have another top 5 quarterback season? Can he have success in the postseason? Lamar Jackson, very intriguing for me.
Yeah, I had the Ravens on my list as a whole, basically the offensive
Gotcha.
side of the ball.
Mm-hmm.
So I do think this is something that's interesting to talk about because there were some real issues with this team last year. I think that, the issues of people calling out their plays before the snap, I think is a major problem. That's not usually a recipe for success. And I do think that there are conversations we have to have about, can this team get it done in the playoffs with the way they play? I do think it is a conversation that needs to be had now at this point. I do think that this is a Super Bowl contender, but I do think that they are a step below the Kansas City Chiefs. And I do think that right now, I think we both had them as the second best team in the AFC North. Until we see this offense hit that level where it can be consistently dominant, I do have concerns with this team. And I think it's going to be in a storyline we watch all season.
Yeah, I think so as well. They're electric to watch. Great uniforms, too. I'm a big fan of their uniforms. I'm not sure. How do you feel about the Baltimore Ravens uniforms?
Purple and black tends to lead itself to being high up the rankings. I think that's a really nice combo.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would have it in the upper echelon. I don't know what I'd have as my number 1 uniform. The Rams with the name tag logo is number 1.
Yeah, I was about to say the Buccaneers alarm clock jerseys. Those were just fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, I do think it is a good jersey. Besides that, the Ravens offense, we've seen, I don't know, do we say flashes of good performances from Hollywood Brown? He got rid of his nickname, right?
Did he? So Marquise Brown now?
I don't know what it is. I'm going to stick with Hollywood. I've been calling him that since Oklahoma.
People don't understand. You don't get to choose your nickname. Like you don't control your nickname. It's just one of those things that exist about you.
So we've seen flashes, although I think that anyone who watches would say there's more to be desired from him, especially at this point in his career. So I think you want to see a little more out of him. Rashad Bateman's obviously a guy that everyone's pretty high on. I think he is going to be a good option as well. They just got to kind of put this together, and we got to see, can they hit the intermediate passes? This was a team that I thought was dying for a target that they could go to on like a 3rd and 7, 3rd and 6. Maybe Bateman becomes that guy this season. Maybe Brown hits the next level and can become that guy. They need to find that consistent target, I think, for them to hit that level.
Yeah. All right. Number 4. Where are you going with this?
Tua. Tua was number 2 on my list. Tua Tagovailoa, I think, is a guy that I even think I said on this podcast was the number. I think I said last year that if he was healthy, I would have taken him number 1 overall if I were Cincinnati. He did not look like a number 1 overall quarterback last season at all.
No.
He definitely had his struggles last year. I think his arm's better than what was shown last season, and I think that's going to be a big thing. However, I'm concerned about how they're putting him up for success too, because they want this new vertical offense, but they might have the worst offensive line in football. So unless Jalen Waddle can get separation in like half a second, I don't know how a vertical offense is going to work with this offensive line. Are they going to be able to give him enough time? And also, is he going to be able to make the changes that he needs to, especially throwing the ball downfield, to be a good NFL quarterback? I think these are questions that we have to have. I'm still a believer in Tua, but I do want to see a little more out of him.
Yeah, Tua was on my list as well. A little bit lower. I had him at 10, but he was there. I mean, yeah, it's very compelling. He was sort of this can't miss prospect who did not have a great rookie season. And, you look at what happened last year, he was so good, there's a huge disparity in when he was kept clean versus when he was under pressure. And there's that disparity of everybody, but it does make you wonder, why do you improve the receiving core as opposed to the offensive line then? Although, again, analytics will tell you receiving core is more important than offensive line, but they still don't have a great one. So it's interesting to me, and this is something that we could see Tua be in the NFL 10 years from now. We could see him out of the NFL next year. So that's always compelling.
Yeah. And, he just, it's so hard because it's so hard sometimes for some of these really great players in college to separate the college player from the NFL prospect.
Mm-hmm.
But just the accuracy and ball placement that he showed in college, we didn't see last year in the NFL. Those are things that he looked elite at. And it's, he looked average last season. And I don't, go ahead.
I was going to say, I mean, the one biggest issue about his game is the arm strength. The arm strength just wasn't there last year. And you said you think it isn't as bad as maybe it was But last year, I mean, he was not able to fit the ball through tight windows because the windows would close by the time he got the ball there. Arm strength is a big deal in the NFL. You do have to be able to push it forward, which he struggled with last year, quite frankly.
Yeah. He's got deep threats to work with this year. Maybe that helps with having Will Fuller and Jalen Waddle. But I think overall, I think across the board, he's just got to be better. And I think that's something that we might see this season, or else, Dolphins are in this precarious position because I think the interesting thing was he was also drafted by a team that was pretty good last year. There's not a lot of rookie quarterbacks who go into those situations. And if he struggles again, the Dolphins are now in a situation where they say, hey, we have a roster that we think is good enough to make the playoffs, but can our quarterback put us in that position? And he quickly becomes a bubble quarterback in my mind, especially playing in a situation where, they need him to be good because it's a good team around him.
Yeah, I mean, and the other aspect of this is, with Tua, I would say is Justin Herbert got selected one spot behind him, and Justin Herbert won Offensive Rookie of the Year, looked great. So that's another aspect here. Any final thoughts on Tua before we move on?
No, I think we covered the Tua conversation. Go ahead and go on to number 5.
All right, here. I'm going to change one of mine, I think, a little bit. I was just going to go Trevor Lawrence. I think I'll go Trevor Lawrence versus Zach Wilson. I think that's a good one because these are two guys who are very hyped up, two of the better prospects we've seen in quite some time, who will have the better rookie season.
Yeah, I definitely think it's going to be the interesting conversation. I thought, one of the things I continue to harp on is that I thought Trevor Lawrence was put in a really good position for a number 1 pick with, I thought, it's not a great receiving core, but I think it's a solid receiving core. He's got 2 pretty good running backs behind him. He's got a, solid offensive line in front of him. There's not many rookies who go into a situation like that, especially going number 1 overall. And that's something that I think is going to help him. And I also think that he's an incredibly talented prospect. The ability to not only throw from the pocket, throw it deep, throw it short. He's accurate. He's good with ball placement, I thought. He's mobile as well. Just everything that he does, I thought was really impressive. And then Zach Wilson coming onto the scene last year for BYU. And there's not many players that I think have shown a better ability to improvise in college than Zach Wilson. The ability for him to make plays out of virtually nothing, I think, is a very rare trait, and it's something that we saw out of Mahomes that was really impressive, Aaron Rodgers that was really impressive, even going back to college. And
Johnny Manziel.
I didn't want to say it, but I mean, improvising. There's a difference between improvising and making a big play and improvising and saying, hey, Mike Evans is there. Let me throw it up in his direction. Right. That's a 2 different completely improvisation stuff. So, yeah, I mean, honestly, there's just so many things that I did last season with BYU that you rarely see in a prospect. While I still had Trevor Lawrence number 1, I acknowledge that the Zach Wilson stuff is real, that it's a special talent to be able to do that at the end or at that high of a level, and he's going to try and translate it to the NFL.
Yeah, I mean, you have the best prospect since the most hyped up prospect since Andrew Luck, and then you have Zach Wilson, who people are saying, like me, who are saying this guy could be Aaron Rodgers. He has that talent. It should be very exciting. And this is something we hopefully will be having a discussion of Trevor Lawrence versus Zach Wilson. I mean, this could be something that's on First Take 15 years from now, right?
Yeah. I mean, it really could be. I mean, I can imagine Skip Bayless's arguments towards this. I mean, there's not an Oklahoma quarterback, so he's probably not too strong on it. But overall, yeah, I mean, this is a really interesting debate. I think it's going to be something that, like you said, it's going to be talked about for a long, long time. Yeah, not quite as much as Jameis Winston and Marcus Mariota, but
right. Man, I was so ready for that to be a thing. All right, well, it worked out for the Buccaneers. I guess I can't complain. Number 6, where are you going?
we're kind of quarterback heavy right now, but I'm going to continue it anyways. This is always something. This is my personal take, but just something that always interests me to watch is the bubble quarterbacks. And the bubble quarterbacks, I mean, are the guys who are kind of fringe starters to guys we need to see a little more out of. And are they on the verge of losing their job or at risk of losing their job? Guys I'm looking at as bubble quarterbacks are Andy Dalton. It could be, veteran quarterbacks with talented young players behind them like Andy Dalton, Cam Newton. There's guys like on their last legs, whether it's guys like, you're looking at Carson Wentz after a really struggling last season. You're looking at Ryan Fitzpatrick at his age. And then you're looking at guys too, like, Daniel Jones, potentially Jalen Hurts. There's a lot of these quarterbacks that it's like, okay, if they don't show us something this season, is it a time for a upgrade? Because I think one of the things that we've seen develop more and more throughout the year, or throughout the years, honestly, is mediocre quarterback play or below average mediocre quarterback play, or just bad quarterback play doesn't cut in the NFL anymore. You can't win without sustained, at least solid quarterback play. And I think one of the things that we've seen over the last couple of years, especially, is the development of quarterback play has caught up to the need of quarterback play. And what I'm talking about is, last year we talked about it. There was 5, first round draft picks in the NFL last year at quarterback. And, there was guys like Kellen Mond too, who are also really hyped as quarterback prospects. So 5 quarterback prospects last year in the first round. I'm looking at next year too. I've seen anywhere between 3 and 5 quarterbacks talked about in the first round for next year. And I also think there's a couple guys getting slept on in college too that could be first round picks too. So you're looking at 5 to 7 first or second or third round quarterbacks to go along with the guys who are on the bubble. I think that there's a lot of conversation to be had about quarterbacks this season who are on the fringe.
Yeah, I think that's all good stuff. I think maybe a bit of a reach, though, I'll say.
What, having it this high?
Yeah, maybe you could. I think you could have gotten that potentially in the teens.
I don't know. This is just always something that I watch specifically.
It is interesting. It's an interesting discussion to have.
Yeah, so I just think that there's so many talented quarterbacks coming up, especially in college right now, that, the Saints can't really afford to have bad quarterbacks, especially in the NFC South with that roster. The New York Giants have a wide open NFC East, and, they're just begging Daniel Jones to get better. I think that's a conversation to have. So I think that there's just conversations to have at quarterbacks, and that's always something that revolves throughout the year.
Yeah, it's such an interesting thing. And it always, this is the kind of thing that can make or break a franchise if you get this wrong. So that's why it's interesting. I'm going to go different way here for number 7. How about Aaron Rodgers / the Green Bay Packers? To me, this is very compelling. I had this higher on my board than 7. You have Rodgers, who, this could be his last dance in Green Bay. The Packers, obviously, this might be their last chance before the Jordan Love era starts, where I'm sure he'll end up being a Hall of Fame quarterback. That's how Green Bay does things. But to me, this is incredibly compelling. Will the Packers, will Rodgers ride off into the sunset, at least of the Green Bay sunset, probably has more years left with a ring, and what probably is going to end up being his last season as a Green Bay Packer.
Yeah, this was something I had next on my list, actually. So we were kind of right on with this one. Mm-hmm. I think it's an interesting conversation. He posted the Last Dance picture, which was a little goofy. So, this was a Packers roster begging to win a Super Bowl. And now you're at the point where not only Aaron Rodgers seems out, Devontae Adams seems out too. It looks like he wants to leave too, based on the conversations that we've heard this offseason. And I always thought Rodgers might be available next season. I think I said early in the offseason that I think Rodgers is going to be in play next year. And then it just kind of progressed with all of his, all the reports coming out during the draft and that kind of thing, that maybe it's this year. Well, it turns out it's going to be next year. He's got one more left in him. It is going to be interesting because they had basically one major hole that Tampa Bay took advantage of, which was the second defensive back. They addressed that first round this season. Is this team ready to win a Super Bowl? I think it's in the contenders list, but can they get it done? Can they win a Super Bowl? It's going to be the big question. That's going to be the biggest thing that keeps Aaron Rodgers is if they win. Yeah,
I would also say wide receiver depth a little bit with having a true number 2 guy has been an issue with them. And again, what if the Packers go to the Super Bowl and lose in overtime? And then you'll have this thought in your head of, if we just use that first round pick that we spent on Jordan Love to help us now, whether it's trading or drafting a guy who could play now, could we have won 2 Super Bowls because of that? That's not a question you usually have about a late first round pick.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, so it is interesting. Yeah, I don't know what's going to happen with Green Bay. It does seem like this is kind of over, though, right? Like, couldn't you see this kind of self-combusting on them?
Yeah, I think it's possible. I mean, I don't know. I feel like it won't. Maybe not self-combust. I think they'll make the playoffs at least. I'd be very surprised if they didn't.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's fair because I think the NFC North is beatable, I guess is the way to put it. I do think the Vikings are going to be solid this year, but overall, the Packers are head and shoulders above those teams. They just got to kind of put it together. I think that, like you said, your boy Eric Stokes, he's looked good in preseason. I think he could be the answer at the number 2 cornerback spot. I still like Alan Lazard. I still am adamant. I think he can be a number 2 receiver. He's just got to stay on the field. I do think they have the pieces to win a Super Bowl. It's just really competitive in the NFC, which kind of transitions into my next pick if you want to go ahead.
Sure. Where do you want to go here with number 8?
The Los Angeles Rams. And you can lump Matt Stafford into this too. This is a team that basically said, we don't care about first-round picks anymore. They've mortgaged their future. Is that going to pay off at this point? Is this a team that now can win the Super Bowl? Like I said, I think if I were to put 3 contenders in the NFC right now, I would honestly, I might take, if you gave me Bucks, Packers, Rams against the field, I would pick one of those 3 teams to win the NFC. They feel like the best teams in the NFC right now. And I think the Rams are in that conversation. They have a great defense. They have a really good offense that just upgraded at the most important position. And I think Stafford's good enough to win a Super Bowl. So the Rams are going to be an interesting team to watch all season.
Yeah, I think so as well. I think the Rams are the biggest threat to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in the NFC. I think the Rams, I wouldn't be shocked at all. I wouldn't be shocked if this team wins the Super Bowl. I mean, that's how good this team is. I think that maybe are getting slept on a little bit. But again, it's also compelling of, we don't see this too often where a great franchise quarterback changes teams. I know last year we saw Tom Brady do it, so maybe it doesn't have the same effect. But when Kirk Cousins went to the Vikings, that was a big deal. Stafford is, and I like Cousins, but Stafford's a significantly better player than Cousins. So this is very interesting.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And, this was a team I picked to make a Super Bowl last week. It's got an extremely talented roster. Raheem Morris is their defensive coordinator, right? That's what we talked about.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's not much that I don't even know if there's anything you can really hate on this team. Maybe running back, but at the same time, if there's one problem you want to have on an NFL roster, maybe it is running back. You can kind of patch that together. And, a guy like Sony Michel could be available in 3 weeks. So I think that this is going to be a pretty good team overall. I think the Rams are real contenders.
Your hatred of Sony Michel, it cracks me up.
Well, I mean, honestly, it's not really hate. I mean, I give him credit for that run to the Super Bowl because he was really impressive. But, I mean, he is kind of who he is at this point. He looks... I think the problem is he hasn't separated himself as a number 1 running back option. He's also the most expensive of the group. I don't think James White's leaving. I don't think Damian Harris is leaving. Stevenson's obviously a rookie. He's not leaving. And, I think J.J. Taylor can do a lot of what Sony Michel did just fine, and he can catch the ball out of the backfield. So if he separated himself as the number 1 guy with being the most expensive, I'd be like, sure, keep him. But he's kind of expendable at this point.
Yeah, but on the bright side, it's not like any good running back was selected after him or anything, right? So you don't have to worry about that.
No good running backs, no good quarterbacks, anything like that.
No, yeah, that was clearly the correct decision. All right, number 9. I'm just going to Raiders. The Raiders are always interesting. And whatever they do, whatever's going to happen, we're going to be at some point having some incredible discussion about the craziness that goes on with the Raiders, no matter how bad or good they are. John Gruden is just incredible to watch. The Raiders being in the NFL is fantastic for the NFL.
Yeah, this was a team I kind of had twice on my list. I'll explain that shortly, but I'll start it with the Raiders. The first part I had is, can this team get it done at the end of the season? This was a team that last year that we talked about, you picked them to make the playoffs, and at the beginning of the year, they looked a part of a playoff team. And what was so surprising was this was a team with a brutal start to the season last year as far as schedule. They managed to upset the Chiefs. They won some games that they needed to. But the last 2 years, I think I was looking at it, they were 1-5 down the stretch 2 years ago, and then last year they were 2-5 down the stretch, losing games like, you're looking at the games they lost. It was like the Chargers, the Colts. You're looking at teams like the Falcons. That's games they just shouldn't lose that they ended up losing to end the season last year. I mean, that's kind of the thing with the Raiders. They got to be able to win these games down the stretch. And I think it's really important that they got to be able to win those because this team has the talent to make the playoffs. I do believe that. But if they can't win these games down the stretch and win these close games, I think that's going to hurt them.
Yeah, and you also have, all of these interesting young players who they quote unquote reached on over the years. How will they continue to develop? New defensive coordinator. How this defense was so bad last year. Derek Carr, always a joy to watch. Very good quarterback. So a lot of intrigue here. You want to move on to number 10?
Yeah, we can move on from there. I have the Cleveland Browns as my next pick.
Okay.
This was the team I think you had listed as the most talented roster in football. I tend to agree with it. Maybe, I think that
you just said, so just to be clear, the two Super Bowl favorites are the Chiefs and Buccaneers, most talented team, the Browns, and the two teams that you're going to have make the Super Bowl are the Bills and the Rams.
Yes, I'm full of contradiction.
Your basis here.
I am. So look, I do think that this probably for pound roster is the most talented, but the Mahomes factor I think is a huge tiebreaker for me. I mean, one team has Patrick Mahomes and the other doesn't, and I think that's a huge advantage.
Does quarterback not count as roster?
It does, but at the same time, I would say that if you look at the rest of the roster, the Browns have a better roster than the Chiefs.
Even more complete roster?
Yes, I think that's probably a better way to phrase it. Yes, I mean I do think this is a more complete roster, but even as good as Baker was at the end of the season last year, he's not Patrick Mahomes, and I think that's a huge thing. But as far there wasn't a lot of people high on the Browns last year, besides me. Just pat myself on the back real quick.
Yep.
So, how does this team handle being considered a contender? How does this team handle being considered one of the best teams in the AFC? How does that change things for this team overall? I do think that is a narrative that's going to be talked about throughout the year. Can they back up what they did last year and even make that elevate to that next level of maybe this team's the best team in the AFC or maybe this team can make the Super Bowl? I think that's the conversation we're looking at the Browns this next season.
Yeah, hopefully it goes better than when they were considered Super Bowl contenders with Freddie Kitchens.
I think anything's going to be better than that. But at the same time, I do think this team's going to be good. But I do think it is hard to kind of hit that next level. And I think that is going to be interesting to watch how we do that. How do the Browns handle that sort of pressure?
Yeah, it's one of those things where, we haven't seen them do it before. But then again, it always becomes, everyone does something that you haven't seen them do before once, right? You have to start. You don't. It's sort of the whole every job wants experience. Well, can't get experience without a job. So it's that kind of thing.
Yeah, and I do think it kind of ties into my next point too. Is like we've now seen the Chiefs win the AFC 2 years in a row, and we've seen this. We've seen these teams gradually get better and better that are behind them. When you look at teams like Cleveland, who's built this awesome roster, Tennessee, who has this offensive firepower that might be able to match Kansas City. Baltimore, which has, constantly has great coaching, has a complete roster as well, and has an MVP candidate too. You're looking at these teams behind them. Can any of these teams hit that level? Can any of these teams break through that barrier and maybe, top Kansas City or challenge them at least? And Buffalo too is in that conversation too. So all of those teams are kind of there, but it's easy to be there. It's the next level to kind of beat that Kansas City or, teams in the past have struggled with this too.
Yeah. I think this is a good pick here. Let's go to number 11 now for me. I'm going to go with one that I think will be near and dear to what you're going to be paying attention to. I'm going to go Mac Jones here. And we could go, again, we could, even if you want, we can throw in the Patriots. I think it's two different things. I wanted to actually just focus. Actually, no, I'll say just Mac Jones here because I think it's two different discussions. He was a guy who, he was the fifth quarterback taken. The last fifth quarterback to be taken in the first round was Lamar Jackson. So that can give you hope. There's a lot of people that did not like him. His name is McCorkle. That's weird. But he's also, a guy who's won a national championship. There is a lot of reason to like him. And I think that it'll be interesting to see. He's not starting the season, so that's the frustrating thing. But at some point, I suspect he will come in, and it'll be interesting to see what he does with New England. Will the evil empire rise again?
Yeah, I mean, this is a team that has retooled its entire roster. I think that it's a pretty good roster. I think it's going to be interesting to watch this team as a whole. And I think Mac Jones is going to be something that is going to kind of loom in the background basically all season. It's going to be interesting to see how Cam performs, especially early in the year with that pressure of the backup quarterback, because even as much as Cam Newton, I think at points struggled last year, the good thing he had going for him is the options behind him weren't good. You know, you're looking at Jarrett Stidham and Brian Hoyer. They didn't look the part of starting quarterback. It made it a little easier on him. And, you know, I thought Cam was bad at points last year, but at the same time, I thought some of it was a little overblown because of how good he was able to, how good the running offense I thought was at points. I thought he added a lot to that. And I think that's going to be a huge thing for the Patriots again this season. But he's got to be able to throw the ball better, and Mac Jones is going to be behind him ready to go, I think. So I think Jones is someone that, you know, I've been talking about him since basically a year ago, looking at June when I picked him to win the Heisman. The accuracy, the ability to throw the ball at 3 levels, and just everything that he does, I think is legit. I think he's going to be a good NFL player. It's just how quickly is he going to start and how quickly are they going to throw him into the fire? I think he's going to be awesome, but it's going to be interesting to see what happens.
Yeah, I remember there was a game when the Patriots were close to losing to the Jets, and you talked about how, like, I forget exactly, you had a whole thing, but like one of the things you mentioned there was that Mac Jones in a mock draft you had Mac Jones going to the Patriots. So you were on this from a while ago.
I mean, this is the guy I wanted for this team for a very long time. I think he fits everything they want to do. The best version of this McDaniels offense has seen quarterbacks. I mean, I don't want to say he's Tom Brady. That's not fair. But the best version, even when you're looking at like Matt Castle in this group, when you're looking at this New England's offense, when it's performed pretty well, it's had a lot of the qualities of what Mac Jones can do on a football field. So I think that it's going to be really interesting to see how he performs in this team and how quickly he's thrown into the starting spot, because this is a team that, you know, I think is they're not happy with how they performed last season. You can take what you want about the roster, but this is not a team that settles on 7-9 seasons or 7-win seasons. This is a team that expects to be in the playoffs no matter who's on the roster. And I think that everything was built on making the playoffs this season, and they're not going to take subpar quarterback play. So I think it's going to be interesting to see how he performs.
Yeah, so clearly you can speak this into existence. If Tim Patrick ever ends up a Patriot, clearly you have superpowers.
I would love it, honestly. I would just, yeah. I would have to take a cold shower if Tim Patrick ends up on the Patriots, honestly.
All right. One of the weirder, I think, storylines is you love Tim Patrick as much as you hate Sony Michel.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Okay. All right. Number 12. Where are you going with this?
Let's go with let's see. We'll go the Defensive Rookie of the Year race. This is a race that I think is interesting because, as we kind of talked about beforehand, I think this is a race that didn't really have anyone no one looked the part of like a number one prospect. No one looked the part of like this superstar can't miss potential. I think we had players that we both really liked, whether it was Micah Parsons, Jalen Phillips, Xavier Collins, some of the rookie corners as well, whether it was J.C. Horn. I think there are players that you like, but none of them looked like can't miss guys. Can any of these guys hit the ground running that in week one or even just rookie season to separate themselves as a Defensive Rookie of the Year? Is this just going to be one of those races that was like, wow, there was a lot of pretty average players going up for Defensive Rookie of the Year?
Yeah, that's interesting, especially when you think about the last 2 years at least. I'm trying to think about 3 years ago, but last 2 years, you had Nick Bosa, you had Chase Young. They were kind of like, we just knew they were going to win Defensive Rookie of the Year kind of from the start. So now to have an actual conversation about it, it should be fun. This is definitely something I can see being a topic of discussion like week 13 or so.
Yeah, I definitely think it's going to be interesting to look at these guys throughout the year because, like you said, in the past couple of years, we've had can't miss prospects. In the next couple of years, we'll have can't miss prospects. This one felt like it. This feels like the most wide open race probably in quite a few years, honestly. So it's going to be interesting to watch these guys.
Yeah, I think so as well. All right, I'll move on to number 13 now. I'm going with a guy who is kind of in that bubble quarterback range, but at one point was widely considered a franchise quarterback until last year. How about Carson Wentz? Carson Wentz is something who, again, he might miss the beginning of the season. We don't know yet. He might be back. Seems like the recovery is going well. So hopefully he'll be back week one. But again, it's one of the more bizarre things of this guy who had multiple good years. It's not like he was just good for 1 year, awful last year. I think a big part of it was this stuff around him. But regardless, this will be very interesting to see. Did the Colts waste a first and third pick, or did the Colts get an absolute steal with a franchise quarterback for just the first and third pick?
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't even just good years. He was almost an MVP. He's definitely struggled last season. That's putting it nicely. Like you said, it could be attributed to a lot of the stuff around him. But I think what was so surprising was we was also seeing Wentz with subpar talent around him be good. Literally 2 years ago, the stat was over 4,000 yards, not a single receiver topping, I think, 500 yards. I mean, that was fantastic numbers, I thought. I think there was just way too much hero ball out of him last year, and maybe that kind of just gets corrected, and then all of a sudden he hits the ground running. I still believe he can be a pretty good quarterback. I do think he's kind of fallen into that bubble quarterback range to where if he struggles again, he's going to find himself out of the league faster than we actually think. But I do think he's going to be just fine. I do think he is going to adjust, and I think he'll be good for the Colts.
Yeah, and there's the whole repairing him with Frank Reich of it all, too, which is interesting. You want to go to number 14 here?
Yeah, we can move on here. I will go with I got a couple options here. I'll go with Justin Herbert year 2. Justin Herbert is someone that obviously took the league by storm last year, winning Offensive Rookie of the Year. He looked the part of a future star. Can he continue his upward trajectory, and can he put the Chargers in a playoff spot? This was a team that we thought might be a few years away. All of a sudden, with his upside, they've become a trendy wild card pick because of it. Can the Chargers hit that level with Justin Herbert?
Yeah, it's interesting. And again, I feel like there probably could be some regression. So could you see a sort of a sophomore slump out of Herbert? Or do you see, he has a better team around him now, but, they help their offensive line. Will it go the other way? And will he take the next level and become like a legit top 10 quarterback? I think this is a good pick. This is someone who, again, there's a chance that Justin Herbert completely changes the NFL and the scope of the NFL, and we have Justin Herbert and Patrick Mahomes in the same division, which is just incredible to think about.
Yeah, I think the one interesting thing is there might be regression just based on the narrative. The NFL is such a narrative-based league, I think a lot of it was, people were ready to anoint Justin Herbert. I've seen lists that have him as high as like the number 7 quarterback in the NFL.
Right.
And I'm just like, okay, he's the third best quarter right now. Justin Herbert is the third best quarterback in his division. There's no way he's a top 7 QB in the league.
Right. Yeah, and Drew Lock is the thing.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
No, right now he's the number 3 quarterback in his division. I still think he's the top half of the league guy, and he's going to get into that top 10 conversation sooner rather than later. But I just wonder if maybe there's slight regression based on people picking him as like a top 7 guy in the league already. I think that's a little extreme, but I think he's going to be good.
Yeah, it's exactly. We know he'll be great. We'll know he'll probably become an elite quarterback. The question is just how soon. You want to move on?
Yeah, go on to number 15 here.
All right, number 15. I'm going Chase/Waddle versus Sewell. Because, both the Dolphins and the Bengals made the decision to pass on Penei Sewell. Sewell hasn't looked great in the preseason. We already sort of talked about that stuff. So this is kind of an intriguing thing, I think, of you have, this whole scenario. We've already been talking about it. We've already been talking about the Jamar Chase versus Sewell. I'm throwing Waddle in there as well. Again, it's weird how sometimes people that should be in the narrative sort of get left out a little bit. Dolphins made the same decision. So who ends up, do the Bengals or the Dolphins end up regretting this decision?
Yeah, or, on the other side, do the Lions, a team that has felt, desperately needs a wide receiver, do they get a little kind of miffed that man, we could have had Chase or Waddle. One of them could have fallen to us. It just didn't work out that way. I think there's a lot of conversations that could have both ways or all 3 ways, depending on how it works out. I got a feeling all 3 of these guys are going to be fine. But yeah, I do think that there is going to be a microscope of, kind of who is the best of this group and who of these 3 who turns out the best, season to season. I don't think it's going to be talked quite as much as like Wilson Lawrence, but it is an interesting conversation to have him on the rookie offensive players.
Well, I'll tell you one thing. If Joe Burrow gets hurt again, this is a discussion. If Sewell looks good and Joe Burrow gets hurt, it's going to be talked about a lot.
Yeah. I mean, there's already been conversations about it, talking about like, oh, did they ruin Joe Burrow? Because I guess he's had some issues with interceptions in like training camp. And they're like, is he scared behind that offensive line? It seems a little extreme, but at the same time, you know, it would be crazy if all of a sudden this is a conversation all year because Joe Burrow can't stay healthy or is just getting knocked down all the time.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if Joe Burrow's ruined already, then I guess they made the right call. They don't have to worry about him anymore. So go get a receiver.
I guess so. It'll be an interesting conversation, that's for sure.
All right. Number 16. Where are you going?
Um, let's see here. I have Sam Darnold. Sam Darnold is next on my list. This was a flyer taken by the Panthers, and maybe this works out for them. I don't want to continue to sound like a Sam Darnold hater. I feel like we've done that a lot this offseason, but I didn't see a whole lot that looked the part of a, franchise quarterback at New York. But I do think there is a little bit of an Adam Gase factor that could be interesting. We saw it with Tannehill obviously getting away. Can there be a situation where he all of a sudden turns into a really good quarterback? Maybe. I mean, you'll see a couple highlights here and there of Sam Darnold with the Jets where he'll I remember there was one where he rolled left and threw it back across his body, and it went right between two defenders for a perfect throw. And you're like, okay, that's the Sam Darnold. That's the arm talent everyone fell in love with Sam Darnold at USC. But at the same time, there just seems to be some fundamental stuff that he's missing that leads me to believe he's not going to be a future NFL starter. So I think it's going to be a tough situation for him, but I'm interested to watch it kind of play out.
Yeah, Darnold was on my board as well. I mean, let's just be honest. This is a weird scenario. Let's just say things that are factually true. The Panthers, an up and coming team that a lot of people feel like has a chance to do well this year with good offensive pieces around the quarterback position, needed a quarterback, and they went after a guy who has never played well in 3 years in the NFL and have gone all in and have passed on two very hyped up quarterback prospects in the draft. They're really going all in on Darnold.
Yep. Yeah, so it is going to be interesting to see this one play out. But at the same time, I think one of the things that makes it justifiable, at least, now, you could say, oh, if Fields looks awesome this season, you're like, well, you passed on Justin Fields. But I think the good news for Carolina is one of the things I talked about with the bubble quarterbacks is that it just seems like year after year now we're having 4 or 5 quarterbacks in the first round kind of conversations. And maybe you think, okay, we'll take the flyer on this guy. Maybe he turns out all right. And that's basically the same as taking a rookie. And guess what? If he struggles next season, we're going to be in the same spot with a pretty good roster around him that we just got better because we didn't take a rookie quarterback. And there's still going to be rookie quarterbacks that look pretty good next year. If they end up with the number 9 pick, there's still plenty of guys next season, whether it's, I know you haven't looked at a ton of the guys, but whether it's a guy like Malik Willis, Sam Howell, Spencer Rattler, all those guys are going to be there next year. There's plenty of high-end rookie quarterbacks next year too. Maybe you just look at it, let's continue to build this roster, and then maybe we strike gold with this with taking a flyer, or maybe down the line we get that guy that we feel pretty good about.
Yeah, and there's the whole Aaron Donald factor. Although I would say, Aaron Rodgers factor of who knows, maybe next year he could become available. Although I would say it's like, okay, for Matt Rule, I mean, if this doesn't work out, you've now had 2 seasons of, not having success. You probably won't get a 4th season. It's like you kind of would have to be good the very next year. So that's where I think it gets a little tricky and why I probably would have rather secured that position a little bit more. But you're right. This is very compelling. Will Darnold, make Colin Cowherd very happy.
Yeah. We'll see what happens with that. Who do you got here at number 17?
Yeah, 17. I'm going Josh Allen. Similar to your pick about Herbert a little bit, because Josh Allen, he's not a rookie. He's a 4th-year player. But last year, he was a different player than we've seen in past. And the question is, did he just, how will there be some regression? Will he revert back to the mean a little bit? Or is this who he is? Will he get better? Will he turn into, he was an MVP candidate last year, but it didn't feel like an MVP season. It felt like a Pro Bowl season to me. Will he sort of take the next level and be like a Patrick Mahomes and be an Aaron Rodgers and be that guy? Or will, he regress and just be a top 10? Or will he even just, again, a top 5 quarterback, which is what he was last year, nearly, got him a win away from a Super Bowl. Maybe he could be a Super Bowl champion. It should be pretty interesting.
Yeah, I mean, as someone who bet him on plus 1,200 odds for MVP
Okay.
last week, I also picked him to win MVP on our podcast. Um, it didn't feel fluky to me. I thought there was just it was a remarkable growth. I've said it multiple times. It was amazing to see the growth that he had last season, but it felt like legitimate growth. It looked like he was just a better, more poised quarterback in the pocket, made better throws, made better decisions. And I thought that was the big thing that I just saw last year. I thought it was remarkable that, he improved that much and got that much better. But with Stephon Diggs, I think that it was an impressive season from him, and I think that it's just getting better. And not to mention Brian Dabble making Mitch Trubisky look awesome in preseason last week or a couple days ago makes me believe that it's just going to be fine for the Bills on offense. I think they're going to be awesome. So yeah, I'm doubling down on this Josh Allen performance last season. I think he is going to be a star.
Yeah, William Shea also has a great point. Looks great in shorts. That's also a very important factor.
The most important thing when you're looking at a quarterback.
Yes. All right. 18. Where are you going?
All right, let me pull up my list here.
So unprepared.
I know. Let's see. I will go with let's go with we kind of talked about those two, so I'll take those off. Hot seat coaches. This is always a conversation that I look at too, along with bubble quarterbacks. I like looking at negative things. I think there are a lot of hot seat coaches this year. Whether you're looking at Matt Nagy, could David Culley be a first round kind of or a first year kind of sacrificial lamb almost? Could a guy like Cliff Kingsbury, John Gruden maybe? I think there's a lot of conversations for coaches that are kind of on the bubble that have to sort of perform this season. I think that there's a lot of interesting hot seat coaches this year, and I think that there's going to be conversations at the end of the year where we are seeing more and more changeover at the NFL coaching spots than ever before. I think all of these guys are going to be looking at a lot of these teams are going to be looking at themselves if they don't perform or make the playoffs.
Yeah. I also think there's a possibility that every head coach coaches all 17 games this year. Like, I think that there's a chance that happens. Like, there's no one. Last year, we knew Patricia wasn't making it 16. Like, we knew that wasn't happening. But this year, it feels like there's a chance that maybe they don't want to fire Nagy because you have Justin Fields there. If the Raiders can at least be decent in the playoff hunt, they're not going to fire Gruden, which I don't think they'll be bad enough that they fire him right away. So I could easily see it. And you're not going to fire David Culley before he even coaches one season. That would be very, very quick leash. So I feel like that's interesting. But yeah, always interesting to see it. Will there be a new, who will decide to get rid of their head coach?
Yeah, I think it's interesting to watch throughout the year. I kind of agree with you that I could see all these guys lasting 17 games, but there are a few candidates. I mean, I do think Matt Nagy would still be the pick I have, but I do think there are some guys like him and Kingsbury who could be, kind of axed earlier than expected. But at the same time, like you said, I could see all those guys. I could see all those guys lasting the year just because there are things that are, Kingsbury dealing with a difficult division. There's still upside to that team. Nagy, like you said, with the rookie quarterback, there are interesting variables with all these guys.
Yeah. Number 19. This actually was a little bit lower on my board, but I'm going to select it because I want to talk about it. It's my last pick. How about Urban Meyer? You have Urban Meyer who, he's someone who, this is such a unique scenario of he, obviously very well respected in college coaching, comes over to the NFL. That's just fantastic. Interesting to watch. And again, with, these new, I could have done new coaches in general, but I feel like doing a new coach like Urban Meyer is such a unique scenario. I'm looking forward to seeing what goes on in Jacksonville from the coach. What schemes will we see? Will we see a college style offense in the NFL? All that stuff.
And it's so interesting too, because his offense wasn't something that we looked at and said, oh, that's translating to the NFL very well. I think that's the interesting thing about this is how does that translate and how does he adjust? I think, obviously he's a legendary coach at the college ranks, but I think there's just so many variables to this where we've seen college coaches struggle at the next level. Like you said, with the scheme stuff, I think a lot of it's very interesting, and I'm interested to see how this plays out. I don't know. I continue to think the Jaguars are just going to put up points. obviously Lawrence kind of has to work out, but it's going
Mm-hmm.
to be interesting. I think this is an interesting team to watch next season. So I am interested in this too. I think it wasn't one I had on my list, but I probably should have. It is interesting to watch this team next season.
Yeah, it was something. It was one of the last things I thought of. I was like, oh yeah, how about that? Because I think that again, we're talking about exciting. What I look for is something that could end up being amazing and could end up being horrible. And I do feel like that is Urban Meyer to a T.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I do think it would be too. I think this is an interesting conversation to have, and it'll be interesting because this is another narrative where can college coaches work in the NFL? I am interested to see how it plays out. He's done an interesting job of tooling that roster. Some questionable decisions, whether it was taking a running back in the first round when they already had a undrafted free agent running back look really good last season. Bringing back Tim Tebow. There are some interesting variables to the Urban Meyer experience, but this is something that I could kind of see work. There is some nice talent around them that I think they can be pretty competitive quicker than we think.
All right. I think you might have said the word interesting about a dozen times in that segment.
Yeah, I mean, I am interested, honestly, in Jacksonville this season. I'm going to watch a lot of their games, honestly.
Yeah.
This could be the worst team that I watch all year, but I might watch 15 games.
Yeah. Did you watch any of Tim Tebow, by the way?
I didn't need to. I saw what I needed to see.
Yeah. Hilarious, incredible. There was like I made a video about it. There was like 5 plays that made me laugh out loud. I was hoping he would make the team. I want to see more.
The funny thing is like tight end is such an interesting position now where it's become so like talented, but like there still is a history of like kind of guys translating to tight ends who aren't conventional tight ends or growing up football players. Whether you talk about like basketball players like Antonio Gates or like Logan Thomas might be a top 10 tight end right now. He was a stud at Virginia Tech at quarterback. But they don't do it at 34 or however old Tim Tebow is. So that's the interesting thing. That was rough. Yeah, I mean, it was a difficult preseason, I'd say.
Yeah. All right. So round out the list. Number 20. Where are you going with this?
I had another rookie coach on my list, so I'll end it with him. This is my favorite guy in football. I don't care. I'm excited to just listen to him all season. Dan Campbell comes in at number 20. I'm excited for the Lions and their aggressive, how they want to, approach football. It's very old school mentality. He seems like an old school kind of guy in this new age of the NFL. I don't know if that's going to work, but it's going to be entertaining all season. I'm excited for the Dan Campbell experience in Detroit.
Yeah, and the best part about Dan Campbell, too, is you don't have to – if the Lions are horrible week 7 – then Dan, you don't have to watch the Lions. You can just read the quotes after the game.
Yeah, I think what's so interesting about this too is like at least with a guy like Sirianni, you think you kind of have an idea of what he's going to run at Philadelphia. We have no idea what this guy's going to do. We don't know any of his like scheme beliefs or anything like that. He didn't call plays. What has he ever called plays? Or even design? I don't know. I think it's going to be so interesting because we really have no idea what to expect from his football philosophies. So I'm interested to see how he does in the NFL as a head coach. He's wildly entertaining though, and I can't wait to watch every press conference he ever has. I'm going to watch, and I'm going to watch some Lion games just because of what Dan Campbell is and his personality. And I think it could kind of work. It's kind of conventional wisdom compared to what 2021 football is, but he wants a beefy lineup. He wants to have big offensive and defensive line. He wants to dominate the line of scrimmage. Maybe it works. I don't know. It could be interesting to watch the Lions this season.
Yeah, it should be fun. We'll protect your kneecaps. It should be a good time. All right, so that's our list. You want to get into some honorable mentions before we head out?
Yeah, we could talk about a couple of these. I guess you want to go first, or you want me to go?
Sure, I'll go first. So I have the ones that were on my list but did not get talked about. We have let's see. So Russell Wilson, just he started off so hot last year, kind of cooled off a little bit. Trey Lance, again, we talked about him in the preseason stuff. Jalen Hurts kind of went over him with bubble quarterbacks. Kyle Pitts, sort of a similar thing to Sewell of just this generational talent. How well will he do? I also had just the Patriots because, that's an interesting to me. Will they return? But we talked about that with Mac Jones a little bit as well. I also have some more honorable mentions. Joe Burrow, similar to how you felt about Herbert. The Saints quarterback room, who will start, again, similar to bubble quarterbacks. How bad will the Texans be? That was something that was in my honorable mentions. I think that's something I'm interested in. And I also have Jared Goff, Ryan Fitzpatrick, two guys who, new teams. Dak is back. And then Cliff Kingsbury was my other one. So those are my honorable mentions.
I had the Texans on my list too. Is this an 0-17 team, or, what happens with this team overall? I also had the NFC East and the NFC West, two of the most competitive divisions for completely different circumstances. I'm interested to watch how that plays out. I had the Patriots as well. Can this team bounce back and make the playoffs? Don't talk too fast, Alex Gonzalez. Does Big Ben have any magic left in him? Obviously, an incredible preseason game the other day, but does he have the magic left in him for one more season to put this team in the conversation? What else did I have? Can the Bengals protect Joe Burrow was on my list. And yeah, I think the Titans defense was also on my list too. So I think the offense is still going to be fine. I guess that's another variable too. Can the offense continue without Arthur Smith? And then can this defense make this team a legitimate contender in the NFL?
Yeah, you could also go, Julio Jones with the Titans offense. There's a lot to be excited about, right? We could have easily done a top 100 list with this stuff. It's football where there's always a million things we can talk about.
Yeah, I'm excited for the season. We're getting closer and closer, so it should be good stuff.
Yes, all right. So we will be back here. What we're going to do is we won't be back here a week from today. It'll actually be on the Monday. The reasoning for that is there's some preseason games on. It's right during the 49ers game. We suspect Trey Lance will probably play during that game. So look out for us a day later than usual. It'll be Monday, same time though, 5 Eastern time. Also, just what to look for on this channel. I have a Kellen Mond video coming out. Should be not too long after this podcast ends, along with I'll probably make a Trey Lance video about the game tonight. So check out that. And Kyle, let them know where they can find us.
Yeah. We'll start with the question here. MB brings up a great question. How often are you guys on live? Every week. Make sure to tune in. So like you said, August the 30th, next Monday, we'll be live 5 p.m. Then little scheduling programming update. We'll be live Sunday, September 5th with our first week picks at 5 p.m. on September 5th. And then beginning September 12th, we'll be back to our in-season coverage beginning at midnight after the Sunday night game. Anyway, that's a little advanced, but just giving you a heads up. We're on here every week, but make sure to subscribe to the channel, Jackson Kruger Sports on YouTube. Make sure to follow him on Twitter at Jackson Kruger. Make sure to follow me at by Kyle Grondin, or make sure to follow the Twitter account page where we'll post show updates, anything like that, at On the Sideline JK. Also, make sure to check us out on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, On the Sideline Podcast, on both of those. If you listen on Apple, if you don't listen on Apple and you listen here, go to Apple Podcasts anyway, and make sure to rate the podcast and also leave a nice review. We appreciate it. Yeah, I think I covered all of our bases there, right?
Yeah, I kind of zoned out, so I hope so.
I think I did. So I think, yeah, like I said, biggest thing, go to Apple Podcasts and rate us. Give us 5 stars because we are awesome. And also, leave a review too. Tell us how we did.
Yeah, all right. So that's good stuff. Kyle, any final thoughts before we head out?
Dan Campbell forever, man. I can't wait for it. The Dan Campbell experience. Here we go.
All right. Well, again, thanks to everyone for watching or listening. We do appreciate it. And until next time, have a good one.
Peace.